Jim Cornette is known for his wild opinions about wrestling, even threatening violence on those that offend him. Cornette is naturally a controversial figure and is known to get agitated. Thanks to his rants about AEW, for example, one fan was inspired to invade the ring and attack the wrestlers, something Cornette himself would condemn. This is Wrestling Up, and here are the wildest things Cornette has said about WWE, AEW. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official, and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. It was at a fan convention at Detroit where Santino, Marella, and Cornette had a not-so-warm encounter. Back in OVW, talent were instructed to act scared of the boogeyman, but Santino was caught laughing at him. Backstage, Cornette would slap him for his troubles. Santino claimed he was unaware of the preferred reaction to the boogeyman as he had turned up as a fan. He was there as an excited father waiting to watch his daughter in the show, but apparently Jim took advantage of the situation and assaulted him. This did not escape the eyes of many, which meant WWE had no choice but to fire Jim. Had Santino retaliated, his job might have been on the line too. Santino has shared how Jim has derided his profession as being a comedy wrestler. He also shared there was an incident where they were sitting close before meeting in a hallway, where Santino tried to smooth over matters only for Jim to rehash the OVW incident. Santino, however, did apologize to the fans at the convention. While the two have been kept apart for more than a decade, their rivalry has continued. Jim accused Vince Russo of going crazy and used colorful language to describe it. He said the reason why he went crazy was not only did Bischoff and I once again on worldwide television tell everybody what a moron he was, but WWE, the company he begs and pleads to have a job with again, begs to bring him back and constantly emailing Vince McMahon and contacting him saying, "Oh Vince, I could save you. Oh Vince, I could save you." WWE Network took that opportunity as soon as we said his name to put up a non-flattering picture of Russo's ugly ass. Apparently Vince has said people should say what they want to his face, and Jim took that literally. "I've said I don't make money off knocking Vince Russo. It's my hobby. I do it for enjoyment. I make a lot of money, which is more than I can say for that unemployed loser." Vince is of the opinion that Jim hates him just because of wrestling, which was even more offensive to Jim since pro wrestling is a big deal for him. The main issue with Vince is that he doesn't take wrestling seriously because he's part of the reason why this business is in the shape it's in. Vince did try to get him on a show so they could talk it out, but Jim refused. Apparently he wanted no part in getting Vince better ratings. Jim went so far as to say that Vince is bitter of a wrestling journalist because they disgrace him. His counteroffer was for him and Vince to meet face to face. Jim was willing to put up $5,000 to get his hands on him. Both personalities are crazy, and it makes sense that their differences will remain unresolved, with Russo even having a restraining order against Cornette. During the ruthless aggression era, Batista was one of the stars the company knew they could invest in. Cornette was someone who believed in Batista, but felt due to his age they had less time with him. According to Cornette, he had a lot to do for Batista to prepare him for the main event scene, while at the same time, WWE did not feel he was ready and were going to fire him. "We were thinking that he can steal pay-per-views with the Undertaker, Kane, Big Show. At the time, I think Foley and Steve Austin, all those top guys, yeah, he was injury prone and a bit older, so his window was short, and thought that we should get him while he is hot. For 5 to 7 years, which is what his career ran, he doesn't need to be on television every week. Let's create an attraction for the big guy, him and Undertaker. That is why I brought both Kane and Undertaker to the Gardens to work with him, because I had done the same thing to Kane in Smoky Mountain. I had brought Undertaker to help him, and I told them both that this is their future pay-per-view opponent. So now you take him and you see what you can do with him. And if you can get the things you want out of him, then you go tell the boss that they have a guy that can make money with." We did all that and tailor-made gimmick for Undertaker, Kane and Big Show, and they bring him up and put him with Devon, hang that thing around his neck and put a suit on him to cover up his muscles. I had lost my mind. Then they were on the verge of firing him until he started working out with Triple H. It was while working out with Triple H that Batista became the animal that he is famous as. For many, the match that could have stolen the hearts of fans but we'll never see is the one that could have taken place between Sting and The Undertaker. While the rest of the WCW stars finally appeared with WWE and signed, everyone thought that it was a matter of time before Sting appeared in the company. However, he signed with TNA. In 2014, finally Sting signed with WWE. Still, WWE booked Sting in a feud with Triple H at WrestleMania, which they turned into a DX versus NWO feud. Cornette had this to say about it: "The first impression shouldn't have been a loss. If you didn't want him to beat Triple H, don't book the match. Rollins injured him after this, and he would never wrestle in WWE against Taker." Cornette revealed why it was a good thing the match never happened. People would have thought they wanted to see it, but then it would have been a bummer at the end because somebody would have had to lose or it would be a BS finish, and everybody would complain about that. If they could have figured out some way they could have been tag team partners against some team that had some heat and people wanted to see that team get the tar kicked out of them, that would have been great. But Sting versus Undertaker, people just got fixated on it because the match had never happened, for good reason. If Cornette and Vince Russo never got along in WWE, another man Jim hated for the same reason was Ed Ferreira. Cornette felt Ferreira was equally to blame for everything wrong with Russo. Ferreira was blamed for horrible WWE angles, including the infamous one with Terry Runnels where she was pregnant. They decided they could make miscarriage as a part of the storyline, something that no one but Ferreira felt was a good idea. Cornette said that was in bad taste and approached Ferreira, who apparently told him it was something that was always done on primetime TV. Ferreira even ridiculed the struggles of Jim Ross with Bell's palsy and imitated him, before he would cure the affliction by pouring barbecue sauce on it. At this time, Ross was struggling to deal with his very real medical condition, but this imitation was in bad taste. Cornette would harbor a hate for Ferreira for years because of it, with him saying if you took Ed Ferreira's nuts and he threw them into a damn drinking straw, they'd look like a kernel of corn rolling into a storm drain. Cornette has had heat with a lot of people, so it's not surprising to hear that he had heat with Triple H in China. Cornette was working backstage in WWE in the 90s. He would work with independent promoters during that time, and he would take the wrestlers that were not being booked and would book them out there. He talked about how once China was unable to appear at a mall that she had been booked for because of dental work. He was unhappy with that, as he was one of the people who would have to answer for it. On one particular afternoon, Bruce Pritchard calls me and says, "Hey, China has third-party appearances on Saturday and Sunday, doing a signing at X Mall or whatever. She needs to cancel those." I said, "Okay, why?" "She's got some dental work she's going to have done." Okay, when you have booked a major television wrestling star for a promoter who's advertised and who's got a location and got people coming, and they're either going to get autographs or bought a ticket, when you say so and so ain't coming, what's the first question they ask? Why? Cornette had to tell promoters about her dental work, and then apparently when that reached China and Triple H, they were unhappy with him for revealing so much about her reason. I remember about a week later Bruce calls me again. "Well, you got heat with Triple H in China." So what did I do? Well, you told some promoter about her dental work, and he put a period on it. But I'm still waiting for the rest of the explanation, cause that didn't do it for me. I said I've heard of guys kayfabing rehab, but a root canal? That's when he told me the rest of the story. She wasn't going to have a root canal, of a damn crown put on her or whatever. That was part of her jaw restructuring. What was I supposed to say? She just doesn't want to come? Well, you could have made something up. Well, you didn't tell me to make anything up. Sometimes Cornette goes too far when talking about someone. He can insult them too much and exaggerate the issues they have and the way they behave backstage. He calls almost anyone who does not agree with him a detriment to the business. John Laurinitis was not exempt from this. Laurinitis and Cornette never saw eye to eye, but for once Cornette was absolutely right about a human being. According to Jim, no one is a fan of Laurinitis, and there has never been someone saying good things about him. Cornette once said that Laurinitis' own mother was disappointed with him. His own mother slapped the stork that delivered him. Cornette was absolutely right, and the fans will also agree. WWE was unbearable around the 2010 mark, and this was foremost because of Laurinitis. He was the man behind hiring glamour models as women wrestlers, or WWE divas as he called them. He would, according to Cornette and other legends, watch swimsuit magazines regularly and hired based on that instead of on wrestling knowledge. Cornette said that he felt Laurinitis and he were always clashing thanks to the time when Cornette was in charge of the WWE developmental system. Laurinitis meddled regularly, as Cornette said, talking about ring ropes and arguing about that, and micromanaging things things that he need not have. Cornette also said that while he was getting stars ready for the main roster, Laurinitis was one calling them up before they were ready. Laurinitis would apparently never listen to Cornette about what a wrestler was good at, and together with Vince McMahon would repackage them into a stupid gimmick on the main roster. Cornette has never been shy to say what he thinks about Kevin Dunn, making fun of his teeth and overall appearance. Dunn and Cornette do not like each other, but the hate they share is clear in the way Cornette, even now after so many years of not having to work with him, speaks about him. On his podcast, Jim talked about how Michael Cole had said he was an actor on WWE programming. Cornette disagreed, and he said while he liked Cole, that was not Cole, but Kevin Dunn speaking. That's what Kevin Dunn thinks. He doesn't like the wrestlers or the fans. He goes out of his way to tell people to say things like that or to believe things like that. I don't know if Michael Cole believes it, but he said it because he has heard stuff like that from Kevin Dunn, and Michael Cole was Kevin Dunn's boy. Cole was not a wrestling person, so Kevin naturally liked him. So I hate to hear that somebody that I never had an issue with personally has to say BS like that, but it's indicative of the prick that Kevin Dunn is. Dunn is not a man. He has never had a fight in his life. He is a suck-up sycophant that's blown Vince for 40 years to keep a job that he obviously never wanted to begin with. He just took it to begin with to make money and has been trying to get out of it for 40 years to become a Hollywood producer and win Emmys. Cornette is clearly not a fan of Dunn's, and it might be justifiably so for once, as Dunn himself is one of the reasons WWE is in the state it is. Jim Cornette is seen as old and out of touch. That much may be clear, but that does not excuse the hatred he spews on his shows. He cannot and should not be allowed to say the things that he does when he says it with such fervor, whipping the masses of his fans who hang on to every word that leaves his lips into a place where they are ready to riot. Sometimes he goes too far past the area of decency and directly into a place where he can't really return from. Then here comes Sonny Kiss, who apparently got off his day job at the drag show at the Tropicana. They're not explaining any of this. The transvestite or exotico, as they would say at AAA. Kiss reacted saying that people's actions spoke for themselves, and as a person who had been open about their sexuality since childhood, the attack was not something that affected Sonny. A fan had asked Cornette why he hated Kenny Omega, and in classic Cornette fashion, he went over the top in his answer. Jim's hatred of Kenny is well known, with him hitting out at the former AEW champion at every chance he gets and calling him every name in the book. But sometimes the insults were so creative and wild no one saw them coming. When asked by the fan, Cornette went on to tweet in a way that seemed like he was going to talk about something else, mentioning the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, then comparing him to Kenny Omega. He said while Omega had improved, it was too late, much like Dahmer stopped eating people later. I heard Dahmer quit eating people before he got caught. Kenny Omega. If he wants to be respected as a wrestler, too late. He didn't stop there and kept tweeting at fans, showcasing his hate of Omega, but none of them would match up to the comparison with one of the most infamous serial killers. Makes my day a little brighter when I can remind an asshole who wrestled a blow-up doll in front of fans that he sucks. Also him. Thanks. So you're saying Kenny Omega is such a weak, ineffective pussy of a wrestler he physically can't make an 8-year-old cry. When asked why he tagged Kenny Omega, he kept going, because I want this dipshit to know exactly what I say about him so there's no misunderstanding. He should not be allowed in our business. The rage he had towards Omega was something he continued to spout. Dave Meltzer talked about Omega and Kota Ibushi only for Cornette to compare Ibushi to Hitler. I don't really care if Adolf Hitler was an amazing talented painter. He should get no compliments. These Omega, Ibushi, same thing. There's taking wrestling seriously, and then there's comparing wrestlers to genocidal dictators. While Cornette hates AEW, the promotion's wrestlers, and even the founder Tony Khan, he also hates the fans of AEW, calling them sensitive. He said AEW fans were always angry because they had a vested interest in a small group that was going to flop, and naturally they were going to be upset about that. He said that Vince McMahon and WWE were never going to be worried by AEW and that they did not care about the company, because it's like you're telling them they're idiots because they go, oh, this is going to be the thing. Well, no, it ain't going to be the thing, open your eyes. But that's why they're mad. They're sensitive because they thought that this ragtag band of indie talent collected together under a completely inexperienced booker with a wide variety of executive vice presidents all pushing different styles, most of which make no sense and only appear to their friends and followers, they thought that this was going to be it. Vince was going to be shitting himself, shaking like a dog shitting peach seeds, and it ain't happening and they're pissed. Given the way the wrestling landscape has developed over the last few years, it might be something he wants to take back, as it's clear AEW is more than a ragtag bunch of indie wrestlers, and that Vince McMahon and WWE are in trouble. When Riho was champion in AEW, Cornette used to call her out and say she was ridiculous. He even implied Kenny Omega had an Asian girl fetish, and that was the reason Riho was there, calling her a Japanese schoolgirl. Riho wins the match and is the women's champion. She's as big as a 9-year-old girl. Done with Riho winning, he began to insult her. He talked about how Omega came out to save her and said that was why Riho was champion. Here comes Kenny Olivier to save Riho. Now it made sense. This was the goddamn 9-year-old girl that this twit, and he has this Japanese schoolgirl fetish, and there's something going on between Kenny Omega and Riho, a relationship as they used to say, which is why he has nepotismed her into the women's championship with his buddy the billionaire, because he's the executive vice president. Cornette would go on to insinuate that in regards to Omega and Riho's relationship, he's f***ing her. He's got to be. What the f***? While the two have been friends going back to their days in Japan, Cornette's comments are unfounded. Jim Cornette thinks Ethan Page is a clown. He's called him that on occasions, and he downright can't stand the sight of Orange Cassidy. Cornette has often talked about Cassidy and how the character infuriates him with his laziness and pretending to hit slowly with his opponents. Cornette said the joke was not funny to begin with and that it's grown old now. He's a blooming idiot. He's not going to break through to any level past where he is right now, because he's established to people that he's a phony comedian that's not funny, and for people who like phony comedy that's not funny, they like him, and for people who don't, they ain't gonna start. So this is what it is right now. It's the same joke being told every week for years now, and it's old. Cassidy, in contrast to what Cornette thinks, is one of the biggest stars in the company who is beloved by fans. Jim Cornette thinks wrestling should be done in a certain way, with certain wrestlers being kept strong. He is often actually right in his opinion, but the way he expresses it makes it wild. When CM Punk was in a feud with Powerhouse Hobbs and Orange Cassidy defeated Hobbs, Cornette nearly had an aneurysm. While it was true Hobbs losing was not the best idea at the time, the hate Cornette had for Cassidy came out and he opened up on what he thought about it, blasting AEW and everyone else in sight, going so far as to say CM Punk should have questioned Tony Khan. If I was CM Punk, as soon as I saw the first match on Friday Night Rampage, I would have gone to Tony Khan and asked him, "Are you kidding me? Is this a rib? I have a match with Powerhouse Hobbs, one of your budding new superstars, who has all the talent, all the potential, all the tools to succeed in the world, and I gave him his best singles match he has ever had, and hopefully gave him some on-the-job training and elevated him in people's eyes." Not content with the idea of Punk questioning Khan, he felt Punk should assault his boss. And 2-3 weeks later, you lead Rampage with Powerhouse Hobbs against the company mascot Orange Cassidy, and you beat Hobbs with a joke, just because, Tony Khan, you think this clown is cute. Cassidy beat Powerhouse Hobbs in a tournament to determine who's going to get a shot at the World Championship. Punk should just grab Tony by the neck and say, "When you're serious about this business, call me. I'll be at home." Why did they have Punk do what he did to Hobbs for Hobbs to turn around and shit on Hobbs' face on national television? Jim Cornette does not like AEW. I'm sure we all understand that by now, but the fact is, more than not liking AEW, he does not like almost anything connected to AEW. He feels that everything related to AEW is killing the business, so much so that he advocated Tony Khan was the sort of person who should be bullied. He called out the AEW founder and said, "Here's the thing, you said they needed a booker with backbone. Okay, number one, if this was 25 years ago, everybody in the locker room, Tony Khan would have been the guy that they turned upside down and shook for change after school, and stole his lunch money, a nerd with glasses that they went up and thumped his fucking nose and gave him a wedgie. And that's the way they would have treated him, because he was a mark that had enough money to get into the business and didn't know who to get involved with, and that's why they've got a shit show now. At this point, we can be thankful this is not the wrestling industry of a few decades back, and Jim Cornette is not running around backstage trying to hit people. Before, we said Cornette did not like anyone in AEW. That was an exaggeration. Recently, he has had a lot of good things to say about Bryan Danielson and CM Punk. Before any of them were on the roster, there was somebody praised on a regular basis, and that was MJF. MJF was the man keeping kayfabe alive to Cornette. He was living the gimmick, and even outside wrestling, he would be the heel in real life to fans at signings and more. This is what Cornette had grown up seeing, and this is what he wanted from wrestlers. However, when Chris Jericho and MJF had the Dinner Debonair segment, that was something that broke Cornette. The segment was a funny one where Jericho and MJF did a song and dance like it was a musical. Cornette, in a move that was uncharacteristic of himself, said that he would never be complimenting any wrestler from AEW ever again, meaning MJF. I'd like to issue a public apology for being wrong. You know about who. Suffice to say, I'll not be complimenting any current wrestlers again. Even if they display talent or potential, they'll inevitably sacrifice self-respect and go the mud show route to get along with their playmates.